In 1912, a collector discovered a manuscript with no date, no title, and no author, written in a language that doesn't exist. It has over 240 pages, and none of them have ever been deciphered. It is one of the greatest mysteries of the last century, and one of the biggest obsessions in the academic and cryptographic world. For more than 100 years, the world's best cryptographers have tried to solve it. In the 1970s, even the CIA and the NSA took a shot at it. Universities like Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford have scanned, classified, and analyzed it for decades. Thousands of researchers have become obsessed with it. There are forums, blogs, and entire communities dedicated solely to this book. More than 80 theories have been proposed about its origin, and yet no one has been able to understand a single word. This is the story of the Voynich Manuscript. What's most puzzling is that the text seems to make sense. There are rules, repetitions, and patterns that behave like those of a real language. The vocabulary follows statistical laws. The words group into categories. Some appear only in certain sections, and others repeat internal structures. But all that order still leads. Nowhere no translation. At first glance, the Voynich Manuscript looks like just another old book. It's bound in leather. Nothing unusual until you open it. The pages aren't paper, but thick parchment, the kind used centuries ago. Some even fold out like maps. Everything is written in ink that remains legible despite the passage of time. The most surprising thing is how orderly it all is. No mistakes, no erasures, no signs of improvisation. Every line, every symbol, every illustration is placed with precision, as if whoever wrote it had planned everything from the very beginning. The book has over 240 pages, though it's believed at least 20 have been lost. It bears no clear relation to any known alphabet. Not Latin, not Arabic, not Greek. Nothing. Some symbols resemble cursive letters, others numbers, and some nothing at all. Is it an artificial language, a lost one? Or maybe it was never a language in the first place. Marcy ended his letter saying that he awaited news, hoping that Providence would enlighten Kircher's genius in this endeavor. He was asking for help from one of the greatest scholars of the time, telling him that only someone like him, capable of deciphering hieroglyphs and lost languages, could solve such a mystery. He even sent copies and fragments of the text, hoping for a response. But even back in 1665, the Voynich Manuscript was already an unsolvable problem. Marcy also mentioned that he believed the author was Roger Bacon, an English philosopher, scientist, and cleric from the 13th century, far ahead of his time. He studied optics, physics, and mathematics, and was one of the first Europeans to experiment with magnifying glasses and lenses that made the theory fascinating. If Bacon was the author, then some illustrations could make sense. Many pages show what look like cellular structures or microorganisms, drawn with surprising accuracy. The problem: microscopes capable of showing that level of detail. weren't invented until the 17th century, 4 centuries later. Another theory soon appeared that the book was an early work of Leonardo da Vinci. The manuscript's drawings are clumsy, clearly not by a professional artist. That could point to someone amateurish, like young Leonardo. On one astrological page, there are 15 womens, some of them pregnant, surrounding a circle that looks like a calendar. Each one holds a star, symbolizing birth, and at the center is Aries, the zodiac sign for April. The connection seems far-fetched. 15 pregnant women, Aries. April 15th, Leonardo da Vinci's birthday. Coincidence? Maybe. But with the most mysterious book in the world, nothing gets dismissed too quickly. And if anyone had the mind, the obsession, and the talent to create something like this from scratch, it could have been Leonardo da Vinci even before the world knew who he was. But the issue is that the parchment is of extremely high quality, larger than the standard size of the time. It contains fold-out pages, which were very expensive by the cutting and binding show. It was prepared by a professional, not an amateur. It was a carefully planned work that must have taken years, requiring resources, skilled labor, access to costly materials, and time. That led to another hypothesis. What if it was a forgery created by the very man who found it? Wilfred Voynich was a dealer of rare books. He knew the market and exactly what details could make a manuscript appear authentic. After discovering it, his reputation skyrocketed. He gained recognition, contacts, prestige, and money. The manuscript attracted worldwide attention, and the book's history is murky. There are no solid records of how it reached his hands, simply appeared, with no verifiable past. The writing itself is suspicious, too clean, no errors, no correction, something almost unheard of in medieval manuscripts, which usually show lots of edits and strike-throughs. However, in the early 2000s, radiocarbon dating was performed. The parchment was made between 1404 and 1438, with 95% accuracy. The pigments were also authentic to that period, with no modern materials, and the tests revealed no traces of chemical manipulation. The conclusion: the manuscript is genuine, ancient, and not a hoax. One page shows something unique, the only recognizable structure in the entire manuscript, a walled city. And not just any wall. The towers feature a very specific design, a swallowtail pattern shaped like an inverted V. That detail changes everything. Since this type of fortification only existed in northern Italy between the 14th and 15th centuries, Marci's letter also mentioned this. The book came into my hands thanks to a good friend, Dr. Raphael Misovius, who in turn inherited it from a colleague. Both dedicated great effort to studying it, but without success. So we know the manuscript was written between 1404 and 1438 in northern Italy. Then it was acquired by Rudolf II, later owned by Jacobus Sinopius, then by Georg Barisch, after his death by Jan Marek Marci, who in 1665 sent it to Kircher. From there, the trail is lost. What's clear is that we don't know who wrote it and we can't decipher the text. The Voynich Manuscript isn't just incomprehensible. It seems to have structure, order, and purpose. It's divided into 6 distinct sections. The first is botany. More than 100 plants drawn with obsessive detail. But here's the problem. Most of them don't exist. Some have recognizable roots, stems, and leaves, but many don't resemble anything we know. They're either distortions of real species or simply not from this world. After that, the focus shifts completely. Circles, constellations, suns, moons, diagrams resembling star maps, zodiac signs. Everything suggests astronomy, something blending the two. Then come even stranger drawings, dozens of female figures, with no clear context and no obvious explanation. Just bodies, water, symbols, and lots of text, denser, more continuous, as if something important were being revealed there. Later, the manuscript looks to the skies again, medallions filled with stars, symbols that seem to represent systems, or orbits. There are 9 of these diagrams, each different. Then the plants return, but now alongside jars, bottles, and instruments. They no longer look like simple botanical illustrations, but like preparations of medicinal compounds. At the end, the illustrations almost disappear, leaving only blocks of dense text, almost uninterrupted. Short fragments are headed by small symbols, as if marking instructions, steps, or formulas. No drawings to guide the reader, just words no one can read. In what seems to be the most direct and perhaps the most important part of the manuscript, it has been estimated that the text contains more than 170,000 characters, arranged into words of between 2 and 10 letters. There is no chaos or improvisation. The text has rhythm and logic. At least 22 basic symbols are repeated, though occasional isolated ones appear. Some resemble Latin lowercase letters, others numbers, and some nothing at all. Curiously, the script is written left to right, like most European languages. This suggests something important. The author had a system. These weren't random symbols. He was writing with rules, with structure. But even if it looks like a real language, it matches none we know. One of the first ideas was that it wasn't a language at all, but a code, a classical cipher replacing letters with symbols, rearranging order or altering vowels. Such methods were used to conceal confidential information like state secrets or alchemical formulas. And that made sense, because ciphers aren't a modern invention. For centuries, they were essential tools for kings, alchemists, soldiers, spies, and scientists. One of the oldest was the famous Caesar cipher, used by Julius Caesar to send secret orders to his troops. The method was simple. Shift each letter, pi of the alphabet, by a fixed number of places. For example, if the message was attack and you shifted by 3, it became doubt. Be easy to crack today, but effective in its time. Later, more complex ciphers emerged. Alchemists began inventing symbols or mixing languages, not only to protect their knowledge, but also to avoid accusations of witchcraft. It was common to find Latin, Greek, and Hebrew in a single phrase, mixed with astrological or alchemical symbols. Other methods dropped vowels, wrote only the first half of each word, or used key books. The receiver had to own the same book as the sender and use specific pages as a guide to read the message. Even by the 15th century, encryption techniques were already advanced. In Italy, for instance, powerful families sent letters encoded with polyalphabetic substitution, where the alphabet shifted throughout the text to avoid repeated patterns sophisticated enough to make them unreadable without the key dot. And the Voynich fits perfectly into this idea. Hidden meaning, forbidden knowledge, perhaps reserved for only a few. But here lies the problem. Every cipher starts from a real language, Latin, Hebrew, Italian, something underneath. In the Voynich, there's no trace of any base language, no recognizable words, no roots, no structure to reconstruct. Real ciphers also tend to leave irregularities, uncoded fragments, stray words, inconsistencies. The Voynich, on the other hand, is too perfect, too clean, too consistent, as if it weren't disguising a language at all, but inventing one from scratch. And yet, when analyzed as if it were a real language, it behaves like one. The manuscript follows Zipf's law, a statistical rule present in all human languages. The most common word occurs twice as often as the second, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. This pattern appears in English, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic ways, even in short messages or poetry. The Voynich follows that curve perfectly. Frequent words, intermediate ones, and rare ones. That doesn't happen with random symbols or a system invented without logic. And there's more within the manuscript. There are 2 clear variants of the language A and language B. The first dominates most of the text. The second appears mainly in the Women and Stars sections. And it's not just about words. The stroke changes, the rhythm changes, the style changes completely. This has led to the idea that it wasn't written by a single person. Perhaps there were 2 authors, or even 4 different hands working in secret. The text also shows an extremely rigid internal structure, so rigid it almost seems mechanical. Some letters appear only at the beginning of words, others only at the end. Certain combinations repeat again and again, as if they were fixed syllables, while others never appear together. Compared to Spanish, the Voynich is much more predictable. For example, in our language, the letter Q is almost always followed by U in the Voynich. Those relationships are even stricter. Some symbols always appear together, without exception. When the text gives no answers, another path remains: the images. Many have tried to find patterns between the drawings and the words around them. In the botanical section, for instance, some terms appear only next to roots, stems, or flowers. This suggested they might be plant names, ingredients, or treatments. The same happens in the astrological sections. Certain blocks of text appear right below zodiac signs or constellations. And so, a hypothesis arises. What if it's written B in a real language, but one that's completely lost? A real-world example of what could have happened with the Voynich is Rongo, a mysterious script from Easter Island carved into wooden tablets. Its symbols repeat, patterns are visible, and its structures behave like a real language. It's not a modern invention or a forgery. Everything points to it being authentic, with rules, grammar, and meaning. Over 20 tablets have been found, all with the same signs: human figures, animals, geometric shapes, and combinations that look like complete phrases or ideas. But there's a problem. No one can read them. Not because the code is complex, but because the language disappeared. It died with the island's inhabitants, and no one remained who could teach it, translate it, or even say how it sounded. With them, its meaning was lost forever. What if the same thing happened with the Voynich? What if we're looking at a real language from a civilization that no longer has a voice? Others believe the opposite, that it's not a lost language, but an invented one, a constructed language built from scratch, like Esperanto, a full creation, not a copy, not a coda, new language. Another widely accepted theory was proposed by Gordon Rugg, a researcher at Keele University in the UK. According to him, the manuscript means absolutely nothing. It could have been generated using a tool known as the Cardano grill, a technique used to create fake texts. With this method, anyone with a grid and some patience could build a text that seemed structured, repeated patterns, and imitated the statistics of a real language but actually meant nothing. This would explain why the Voynich manuscript has no corrections. You simply can't make mistakes. For more than 100 years, the Voynich manuscript has been analyzed letter by letter, symbol by symbol, structure by structure. And today, we are exactly where Wilfrid Voynich was in 1912, holding a book in our hands. Unable to read it today, no one knows who wrote it. No one knows why. No one has managed to decipher it. And the truth is, maybe we never will.